everyone, welcome back to another episode in this Arty Musings series. As you can see, I am decked out today, and this is sort of in tribute to the topic I am going to talk about today. It was something that was prompted by a friend of mine, so thank you for that. I thought I would actually share with you guys some of my favorite fantasy artists, artists that have either influenced me because of the kinds of work they did, the kind of visuals they created, or because they were connected to fantasy stories that I have loved growing up. So to start off with, I thought I would revisit Brian Froud. Now, Brian Froud, as I have mentioned in a previous video, was the illustrator for a deck of cards that I have been using for a long time, and that's this one here, and I have shown it to you in a previous video, the Fairy Oracle. And when I first discovered his work through the tarot deck, it was the first time I had seen the fairy world depicted with such detail and displayed so beautifully with such masterful technique as paintings, whereas before that, as a child growing up, you always saw fairies depicted in very, childish ways, even though they were very beautiful, usually in watercolor, with, little fairies hanging off flowers and things that were lovely to look at, but they didn't have as much depth and didn't carry the sort of mysticism or sense of spirit that I'm always looking for in artwork. So this was the first time I discovered it in Brian Froud's work. And because of that, he's actually had quite an influence on me as a painter, even though I'm not trying to paint in a similar fashion or trying to paint characters that are similar to his fairies. He still does influence me in terms of how he creates this vast magical world. So for that, I've always put him on top of my list, and it's one of the reasons that I have continued to look back to him whenever I feel like I am a little lost. I need inspiration from another artist. He's usually my go-to artist, or rather I pick up the tarot deck and have a look at how he has depicted his magic. The other artist, somewhat related, is one of my favorites again, and he was the guy, Alan Lee, who, along with John Howe, brought the Lord of the Rings to the screens. Actually, he was working with Peter Jackson in creating the Lord of the Rings, and it's probably the reason I do love his work. I do love the way he has sketched out the elves, and especially the architecture of this fantasy world that Tolkien created. When it comes to his work, I think he really captures some of the elven architecture especially really well. So again, he's one of those artists that I turn to whenever I want a little inspiration to see how other artists have taken something and depicted it through their imagination. And this is actually one of my favorite books to go back to. I'm not sure if you can actually see much if I show you, but it'll give you an idea of some of the things he's done. All the sketches from coming up with the visuals for the Lord of the Rings. And I do have actually another book here. It's a combination of both Alan Lee's and Brian Froud's work. It's called Fairies, and it was a gift from a good friend of mine. I generally love collecting fantasy books, and I do have quite a few now. And some of these are actually my dad's, which I'm always perusing because I find that there are so many artists that you can learn from and that can inspire you. And not all of them will be people that I'll remember forever, but in that moment when I see their work or read about how they conceptualize, it will spark in me something, that the drive to go and create my own. One of the other artists that I really love and I feel like is completely underrated, and if I'm pronouncing her name right, is Susan Seddon Boulay, if that's how you pronounce her name. And she's done a series of paintings on goddesses, and this is her sort of interpretation of well-known goddesses, most of them. And what I love about her work is the sense of spirit, or the otherworldliness, the incorporeal, if I can say that for this. And I have been trying to capture this in my own work, or trying to get to that state in my own work, and I think she captures it beautifully with her goddesses. Again, I'm not sure if you can see that, but you can Google her and see what kind of work she does. She's not very well known, but I think she should be, because she's incredible, and I really, really love her work. The other artist that I have been referring to since childhood was someone my dad introduced me to through the books that he had, and that is none other than Roger Dean. Probably one of my favorite artists when it comes to backgrounds, especially because he really casts an entire world, and there is a very specific atmosphere, and you can really recognize that with his work. And it's very iconic. I mean, you really recognize his work when you see his paintings. The sense of the sky, the seas, or the mountains, and the air, all of that. And the fact that it's magical, but at the same time, it has a sense of adventure. All these paintings, you feel like you're in the middle of an adventure, whether it's dragons or knights or some kind of magical creature. You always feel like you're in the middle of reading a story in a book. And I love when paintings take me on that adventure. And again, that inspires my imagination, so that's one of the reasons I love his work. The other artist that I love, again, for backgrounds is Bruce Pennington. This, again, was an artist. This artist was introduced to me, or rather I came across him again through my dad's library. And his work is also very specific. There is a certain, I would say, starkness to his color choices and his lines. Let me see if I can show you some of his work. What would be the best depiction? Something like that. I'm not sure if you can see that. And it's really vivid and colorful, and it captures, again, a sense of adventure, but lots of magic as well, and you know how much I love magic. A couple of other mentions that I would like to add into the top 5 that I just shared with you are Patrick Woodroth, again, for creating an entire world. He has this extremely detailed, colorful, and very specific style in depicting his imaginary, whatever it is, if it's a world or a universe or whatever he's creating. But again, it's very vivid, very colorful, and very unique, so I appreciate that in his work. The others, of course, would be, for those who don't know, Frank Frazetta, who has probably created the most iconic version of Conan the Barbarian. The one we all recognize now was conceptually created by him, visually, I mean. And there were many concepts of Conan, for example, before him, but he created the most iconic version, and he's probably one of the most popular artists when it comes to book covers and certain magazines as well. And you probably have come across his work before. Others are popular ones like Julie Bell or Boris Vallejo, if I'm pronouncing his name right. And they too, because of the fantasy element and the way they work colors together, I have been inspired by their work as well. I know I'm missing out on a lot of artists here, but if there are any other artists you think I should look at, then please comment down below and I'll definitely have a look at them. And I'm sorry to all the artists I couldn't mention. There are so many that I am inspired by. But until next time, because I do have to run, I will say goodbye for now, and I hope you are inspired by these artists too.